Hi, I'm Danielle Morris. I'm 38, and last fall I spent my last $900 0 cents on a crumbling house in rural Pennsylvania. For that, my family cut me off like I was an embarrassment. But the real heartbreak wasn't the silence that followed. It was realizing their love had always been conditional. That realization brought me here. Now, they're calling, texting, wondering if there's a spare room in the same house they once mocked. But before we get to that part, where are you listening from? On your porch? Driving through traffic? Drop a comment. You're about to hear the part they hoped I'd never say out loud. My tires crackled over frost-covered gravel as I turned onto a narrow lane. The house was worse than in the listing porch, broken windows and ivy gripping the siding like claws. But it was mine. I put the car in park and stared through the windshield as a light snow began to fall. I didn't feel victorious. I felt abandoned. Still, I got out, pulled a folding chair from the trunk, one I'd used back when I wrote poetry during lunch breaks. I set it on the frozen earth and sat. The cold bit at my boots, but I wasn't leaving. Not this time. A week earlier, I'd been at my sister Marissa's birthday dinner. My parents went on about her upcoming wellness retreat in Colorado. $12,000? 0 cents to reclaim her feminine power. She deserves this, Mom said, eyeing me. Then Dad added, Danielle, didn't you say you'd wire the funds? I looked up from the overcooked lasagna and said it plainly. I didn't. I used the money to buy a house. Forks froze midair. Marisa stopped chewing. My mother blinked, cold and slow. And that's when they told me to leave. We're good. What do you mean you bought something? I bought a house, I said. It's a fixer-upper, but it's mine. Silence. Then Dad's voice, calm, cold, and laced with thunder. You spent your savings on yourself? Marissa let out a dry laugh. You bought a dump instead of helping me reset. That's so typical of you, Danny. I kept my voice even. I never agreed to fund your trip. I just didn't say no out loud. Mom set her wine glass down with a sharp clink. You've clearly chosen poverty. Don't expect us to support your delusions. I opened my mouth, but Dad raised a hand. You want to be independent? Then you can be completely on your own. The next morning, I was gone from the family group chat. No more brunch invites. No birthday plans. And certainly no Easter. Just like that, 38 years of family was erased with a tap of a screen. Back in the present, I shifted in the fold-up chair. The gray sky hung heavy overhead. No thunder, no lightning, just that still, crushing kind of pressure that made everything feel like it was ending. My phone buzzed. One new message. From Mom? Do not come to Easter. No love. Mom. I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the delete icon. Then I slipped the phone into my coat pocket like folding away a piece of myself I no longer needed. The house loomed in front of me. Rotting wood, broken porch rails, and vines creeping up the siding. It was ugly. It was empty. But it was mine. A symbol of everything I wasn't supposed to want. Freedom, control, a life on my terms. Funny thing about families like mine, when you stop serving a purpose, they stop pretending to love you. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. And I hadn't come this far to crawl back. The wind picked up, pulling at my coat as if trying to tear away what little dignity I had left. I stayed seated, then finally stood. I crossed the gravel, stepped over a half-rotted door, and walked into the hollow shell of what would someday be a home. Inside, the smell of mildew and cold rot hit me. The floor groaned under my boots. The air slipped through cracked seams I hadn't seen in the photos. I pulled out the one curtain I'd brought, a faded floral scrap from my first apartment in Philly, and tried to hang it over a window, using a bent rod and a rusted step stool. It crashed to the floor. Typical, I muttered, rubbing my elbow where it hit the wall. I slumped to the floor and leaned back against chipped paint, breathing slow, steady. Then, a memory hit. Out of nowhere. 16. My birthday. Mom brought out a store-bought cake with neon pink frosting. My name was misspelled. Happy birthday, Danielle. No. Marissa had helped decorate. It was supposed to be sweet, but they forgot my name. Again. She got a used Jeep that year. I got frosting-stained paper plates and a promise, maybe next year. That had been the beginning. Or maybe the first time I noticed. Photos where I was always off to the side. Group texts, signed, love you girls, but only her name underlined. A Florida trip I didn't get invited to. I was 28. At some point, you stop thinking it's forgetfulness. You realize it's a choice. I stood and dusted myself off. My hands were trembling, not from cold, from memory. They never screamed, they just erased me. Quietly, gently, like I'd never really belonged. But I was still here, and I wasn't going anywhere. Just a box of donated tools and an unopened can of paint. That's all I had left to work with. I stared at them and whispered, maybe they didn't forget me. Maybe they just chose not to see me. My phone vibrated again. For a second, I braced myself for another cold swipe from Mom. A final digital deletion. But it wasn't her, it was Aunt Lydia. Hey, baby. Her voice crackled through the speaker, warm and rough like gravel under a rocking chair. I just wanted to check in. I could hear her worry before she said it. I saw you're not in the family group chat anymore. I laughed quietly, bitterly. Isn't that something? Digitally exiled. She paused. I want to tell you something, and I need you to hear me. You were never the problem. You just weren't Marissa. That was your only crime. I leaned my head against the cold fridge door. It still hurts. I know it does, baby, she said gently. But listen, when they need something, they'll come back around. They always do. Just don't forget what this felt like. Don't you dare forget. Her voice cracked on that last line. Not from anger, from exhaustion. I didn't know it then, but she was right. They would come back, and they'd want more than forgiveness. The wind had finally settled outside. Dusk filtered through the broken kitchen window like soot. I was crouched on a splintered stool, trying to fix a rusted latch with numb fingers and an even numberer heart. That's when my phone buzzed again. One voicemail from Mom. No preview. Just her name hanging on the screen like a shadow. I didn't move for a while. Finally, I pressed play. Danielle, sweetheart. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind she used with church women and school fundraisers. So soft, so measured, so fake. I've been thinking about you. I know things got tense, but you have to understand, Marissa's been under so much stress. Planning this retreat hasn't been easy. You know how sensitive she is. There it was. Sensitive. Like Marissa was made of silk, and I was made of sandpaper. I just wish you'd considered how hard this year's been for her. And I know you mean well, but your timing, well, it's always been a little off. I could hear the freight train of guilt barreling toward me. She really looked up to you, you know, that's why she reacted so strongly. And your father, he didn't mean what he said, he was hurt. Then the finale. You've always been the strong one, the bigger person. There it was, again, the muzzle dressed as a compliment, be the bigger person, so they never had to be accountable. The voicemail ended with, we're all just doing our best. Maybe it's time to let this go. I closed my eyes, letting the silence stretch and settle like snowfall. Then I repeated her words in my mind. You've always been the bigger person. It wasn't a compliment, it was a strategy, meant to keep me obedient, contained, and visible. I walked to the plastic bin where I'd tossed some keepsakes during the move. At the bottom, I pulled out an old photo frame. My college graduation. Everyone was smiling. Marissa, front and center, held up her camera, completely blocking my face. I'd asked for a retake. They never did one. I'll edit you in, she'd laughed. They framed that photo. I stared at the corner where my shoulder barely peeked out. Then I turned it face down. I hadn't walked away to punish anyone. I didn't go silent out of spite. I left because the noise, the pretending, the performative love was drowning me. I didn't want applause. I wanted peace. A place where I didn't have to shrink just to fit in. Even if it cost $900, 0 cents, and came with mold and broken windows. It was mine. And for the first time, so was I. If this story stirred something in you, don't forget to subscribe, because what happens when Danielle's past shows up at her doorstep? You'll want to be here for that. I grabbed a pen and scrawled one sentence across a yellow sticky note. This is not who I am. I slapped it on the back of the photo frame and set it face down on the counter like closing a chapter I didn't agree to star in. Then my phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Mom. I didn't listen this time. I already knew the choreography. First, the sugar-coated outreach. Then, once you stepped forward, the twist. Tight around your throat until your voice vanishes again. I tossed the phone on the windowsill, opened the frame as far as the broken latch would allow, and let the cool air cut through the musty kitchen. They didn't want peace. They wanted compliance. A week later, the knocking started. It was early. The sun hadn't yet cleared the trees, and the porch boards were still damp with morning dew. At first, I thought it was the wind hitting a loose shutter again. But no, it came again. 3 sharp raps. I peeked through the tattered curtain, and my heart didn't just drop, it sank like a stone in wet cement. Marissa, of course. There she stood, one stiletto heel tapping impatiently against the concrete. Her cream cashmere trench coat was cinched tight at the waist, oversized sunglasses reflecting my empty street like some fashion-forward surveillance drone. Even standing still, she looked like she was on the cover of Subtle Condescension Monthly. She didn't wait for me to open the door. Instead, she turned, broadcasting her voice toward a neighbor walking a golden retriever. Mom says she's gone full mountain hermit, she said, voice syrupy with performative pity. But hey, some people need their rebellions, right? I opened the door just as she turned back. Well, there she is, the proud homeowner, she said, stretching the word like bubble gum. Honestly, this neighborhood's really gone downhill. Do you get raccoons here? She added, glancing toward my overgrown lawn. I folded my arms, leaning on the doorframe. Is that why you're here, doing wildlife surveys now? She smirked. No need to be defensive, Danny. I'm just checking in. You dropped off the grid. You mean after you told Mom I'd gone full swamp witch? Yeah, a little distance seemed healthy. Her eyes darted around, assessing the chipped railings and sagging gutters. This place, she said, pinching the porch post like it was contagious, has character. And probably mold. And a smell. Behind her, a jogger waved. She waved back, grinning. Don't mind us, just some sisterly bonding. Then her tone dropped. Listen, the HOA's been sniffing around. Someone mentioned the place might not be up to code. You reported me? I asked. She didn't deny it. This area has standards, Danielle. People talk. I stared at her without blinking. She pivoted as usual. I'm in a bit of a bind, she admitted with a dramatic sigh. Spa wing at the retreat? Pipe burst. Disaster. Had to cancel 3 sound bath sessions. Total mess. I said nothing. So I thought, maybe I could stay. Just for a night or two? She tapped the porch like she expected it to collapse. Anywhere is fine, even here. Like it was a tent. Like she wasn't hiding from something. You told Mom I was mentally spiraling in a hoarder shack. I didn't say it like that, she muttered, suddenly fascinated with a chip paint flake. I was just worried. And look at you. You're surviving, still doing that what-do-you-call-it, Grant whispering. He didn't correct her. I stepped aside. One night. Don't touch anything. She lit up like I'd offered her a penthouse suite. You're the best. You always were. That's why people walk all over you. And just like that, she swept past me, heels clicking across rotting floorboards like royalty slumming it. I stood at the door long after she passed, staring at her path like it might catch fire. She needed help, but not the kind she was asking for. The next morning, I woke to the smell of instant coffee, and something worse. Not warm, not joyful. The sharp kind. The mocking kind. I pulled a sweater over my tank top and stepped barefoot into the hallway, pulse already rising. And there she was, at my kitchen table, scrolling, smirking, plotting something. The floor groaned beneath me like it knew what I was about to see and was trying to warn me. I turned the corner into the kitchen and froze. There, by the drafty window, stood a glowing ring light, casting its cold, sterile halo across my chipped countertops. My dinted kettle had been shoved aside, replaced by carefully arranged oat milk cartons, granola bars, and a lavender candle I'd never owned. And in the middle of it all, Mariska, full face of makeup, glossy lips, hair curled just so, smiling sweetly into her phone like she was anchoring Good Morning America. Only this wasn't a studio. This was my kitchen, my survival. Say hi to my angels, she cooed into her live stream. We're doing something really meaningful today. I wanted to show you guys where my sister, bless her heart, has been living. She panned across the cracked tile, the sagging floor, the mismatched chairs I found at a salvage auction. It's a bit of a fixer, she said cheerfully, but we love a transformation, don't we? And she kicked the broken fridge. This baby hasn't worked since Y2K. A high-pitched laugh. Honestly, it's giving generational trauma. From across the room, I could hear the chimes of comments flooding in. Oh my God, she read aloud. Someone just asked if this was a shelter. She laughed again, then said, No, sweetie, it's my sister's house. I know. It's tragic. I stepped forward silently. She didn't notice me right away. Another comment popped up. Is that really your sister? She looks like a squatter. Without missing a beat, Marissa turned the phone slightly toward me. Yup, she said, smirking. That's her, slippers and all. It's giving Great Depression chic. And something in me finally snapped. I walked over calmly and ripped the phone off the tripod. The sound of the suction cup releasing echoed through the room, louder than her gasp. Hey, what are you doing? She shrieked. I stared at her, level. You want content? Here's your headline. Get out before I give them the real story. She lunged for her phone, but I held it out of reach. You don't get to weaponize my life for likes, not anymore. The shift was instant. The victim mask slid on like a second skin. Voice trembling, eyes glistening. I was just trying to help, she whispered. I thought people could donate. It was for you. You mocked me. You made my pain a spectacle. You turned my house into a punchline. I handed the phone back like it was contaminated. You can go now. She sniffed, gathered her purse and makeup bag, then paused in the doorway. Just long enough to perform for her unseen audience. This is what I get, she said, loud and breathy, for trying to be a good sister. The door slammed behind her. The ring light hummed faintly. I leaned back against the wall, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with fury. And freedom. They didn't get to narrate my life anymore. By evening, the storm had passed. I curled on the old couch, chipped mug in hand, coffee black and bitter. Outside, the hills were wrapped in dusk. Inside, my phone pulsed like a heartbeat. Notifications. Exploding. I hadn't posted a word, but there I was, everywhere. I opened Instagram. In froze. A GoFundMe campaign. Help my sister rebuild. My face, sweaty, mid-step, holding a garbage bag. Another shot of me curled up under Aunt Lydia's quilt. The caption, My baby sis has been through so much. Help me give her the life she deserves. Raised, $18,340.00. Recipient, Marisa Veli. Withdrawal account, Marissa's business PayPal. My blood went cold. I scrolled. Another post. Leaving the toxicity behind. A soft filtered video of her driving away. Piano music in the background. I stood up, pacing the tiny living room like a caged animal. My hand clenched around the phone. The comments were gushing. "You're an angel. The world needs more sisters like you." I sent $50, 0 cents. Hope she gets back on her feet. I slammed my mug on the table. It cracked. She had monetized me, my struggle, my dignity, and hadn't said a word. No call, no warning, not even a text. I opened our last messages. Nothing. I tried to report the campaign. The platform replied, "This campaign does not violate our community guidelines." Of course it didn't, because Marissa knew exactly how to game the system, and I wasn't going to let her win. Frame it just right, say just enough, let people assume the rest. That was always Marissa's way. A new story had just gone live. Some people just want to stay mad. I'm doing what I can. Haters gonna hate. I stared at those words until they blurred, then swiped back to the image. The one where I was kneeling on the porch in worn slippers, dragging garbage bags across chipped concrete. She had laughed, Great Depression chic. The door creaked with the mountain breeze. Inside it was quiet, too quiet. It felt like a ghost haunting the life I'd built. Then a notification slid across my screen. Message request from @legal_LC_co. "Hey, I saw the GoFundMe. You didn't authorize that, did you?" I blinked. "I'm a paralegal, Colorado bar certified. This looks like civil exploitation, possibly wire fraud depending on how the funds were presented. Want to talk receipts?" I sat down slowly, eyes locked on the message. My heart didn't race, but steadied. Someone else saw it, not just the mockery, but the strategy behind it. The way Marissa had built a narrative and fed it to the world like charity-flavored candy. I typed one word. "Yes." She responded immediately. "Cool. Start with screen recordings. Capture timestamps. Don't confront her publicly, yet. Trust me." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something that had been missing. Power. Not a tidal wave, just a pilot light. But it was mine. I flipped my phone to do not disturb and got to work, documenting, organizing, screen capturing, every swipe, every smirk, every dollar. Not just to defend myself, but to dismantle the game she'd built, with me as the bait. The morning before Marissa's big healing stream live stream, the house felt still, clear. Mountain air swept through the cracked windows while I sat at the kitchen table, phone buzzing, laptop glowing. 2 weeks ago, I would have been pacing. Now, I was ready. Elsie's face lit up Zoom, framed by scattered legal pads and the last half-inch of coffee in a mug that read, "Contracts are my cardio." We reviewed the final cease and desist letter, her voice calm even when mine wavered. "Breathe, Danielle," she said gently. "The paperwork does the talking now." I leaned back, watching the clock count down to Marissa's live stream. The raw, unfiltered tell-all she'd hyped for days. Her first big public move since the GoFundMe windfall. It would have been laughable if it weren't so calculated. 10 minutes before her broadcast went live, Elsie's courier confirmed. The envelope was delivered, exactly as planned. The screen flickered. There she was, Marissa Vale, bathed in soft lighting, framed in houseplants and salt lamps, her hair curled like sincerity itself. "Hi, beautiful souls," she said, voice silky. "Thank you for being here today. I know there's been some noise, but we're about positivity." I watched, unmoving. She wove her narrative like always, how she was just trying to help, how some people react with pain instead of gratitude. Then it happened. Halfway through a question about family loyalty, an assistant walked into frame, clearly nervous, clutching a manila envelope. Live chat lit up like fireworks. "What's that?" She looks freaked. "OMG, what's going on?" Marissa took the envelope, blinking fast. The letter inside was short, clean, and devastating. Her hand trembled. She glanced at the camera, then away. The background music, normally serene, looped awkwardly. She mumbled something off mic. Then the live stream cut. Abruptly. No goodbyes. No closing affirmation. Just static. I exhaled slowly. No screaming. No spectacle. Just a sharp, precise reset. Within minutes, Reddit threads exploded. A cease and desist live? She got legally bodied on camera. Screenshots or it didn't happen. Clips of her frozen face went viral. Legal Twitter started unpacking the wire fraud angle. TikTokers broke down the donation trail. All roads led back to her PayPal. Then, another ping. Message from @OHO_president_Skyline ST. Hi Danielle. We were unaware Marissa Vale was using the Skyline Estate's name to solicit funds. Please know we're reviewing her actions internally. I smile for the first time in days. Because this time, I wasn't just surviving her story. I was rewriting it. This misrepresentation violates our Code of Ethics and Emergency Aid policies. We're initiating a formal review and would like your cooperation. That was the opening line of the email from Skyline Estates. Attached were PDFs. I opened them, fingers trembling, not from fear but a quiet fury building like a tide. There they were, applications Marissa had submitted to multiple grant and housing programs, forms laced with half-truths and inflated claims. She'd used my name, my address, my actual struggles, all rebranded into bullet points in her funding pitches. She hadn't just betrayed me, she defrauded programs meant to help people like me. But instead of panic, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. They wanted me to be the broken sister, the cautionary tale, the tragic backdrop to her glow-up. But I wasn't built for pity. I was built for resilience. I closed my laptop gently, not like I was closing a fight, but like sealing a case file. This time, I wasn't the one with explaining to do. The drive into Los Angeles felt longer than it was. The freeway shimmered with late afternoon sun. My navy dress didn't sparkle, but it fit like intention. Around my neck hung the old silver locket my mother once mocked, calling it flea market trash. Tonight, it felt like armor. As I stepped out of the car and handed the keys to the valet, I glanced at the oversized banners lining the hotel. Marissa Vale presents Healing Families, one heart at a time. The irony could have knocked a lesser woman down. I squared my shoulders and walked into the Marriott Grand Ballroom. Inside, the crowd buzzed. Influencers, journalists, wellness junkies, all angling for photo ops and good lighting. And there she was, Marissa, center stage, her skin glowing under golden spotlights. A shimmering champagne dress hugging her like approval itself. Her laugh rang out like it had been rehearsed. But I wasn't here to cause a scene. I was here to witness the truth catch up. I took a seat near the back, invisible but alert. She floated from group to group, blessing everyone with her curated charm. The slideshow began. Smiling kids, generic thank you letters, grainy rehab stock footage, soft clapping, polite nods. Then, it happened. A flicker. The next slide was not hers. A text message projected in massive font. Let her rot in that dump. I gave them the GoFundMe link for PR. Cry for me, baby. Gasps, phones lifted, a hum of murmurs swelled. Another slide. She's good for sympathy points. Keep the camera angles low, show the cracks. Then, chaos. The letter air. Rot leaks. Marissa exposed. Fake healing. Hashtags sprouted like weeds across live feeds. Marissa turned, catching sight of the screen, and for the first time in my life I saw it. Not a crack. A full collapse. She blinked. Stammered. Tech glitch. Sorry, guys. But no one was buying it. Not tonight. Then, from the front, Aunt Imogene stood. She'd been scheduled to speak about Marissa's resilience. Instead, she climbed the stage with quiet purpose. She didn't look at Marissa. She looked at everyone else. I was asked to speak tonight about hope, she began, voice ringing out strong. About rebuilding trust, about family. She paused, voice thickening. But for too long, this family has worn a mask. We've smiled in public and shamed in private. Propped up one daughter while silencing the other. Chairs shifted, drinks were set down. I won't pretend anymore. Tonight I don't stand with what photographs well. I stand with what's true. She walked across the room and without hesitation wrapped me in a real steady embrace. The kind that didn't need cameras. Hammers clicked anyway, phones buzzed. But I didn't flinch. I didn't chase Marissa as she fled, heels clicking, gown catching on a chair leg like poetic justice. I didn't even watch her leave. I just let Aunt Imogen hold me. And I let the silence break, not for her, but for me. Some clapped, some stood, some just stared. And I stood still, not as a symbol, but as a woman no longer willing to be written out. I breathed. The silence I had lived inside for so many years had finally spoken, for me. And somehow, it was louder than Marissa's curated world had ever dared to be. Morning sunlight spilled through the patched windows of my little house, casting warm rectangles on the floor. The scent of fresh paint and cut grass drifted through the open window. No more mildew. No more damp shadows. Just light. I tugged a cardigan over my pajamas and padded barefoot into the kitchen, the newly sanded wood floor cool beneath my feet. The coffee machine hissed quietly, and outside I could hear the high-pitched laughter of neighborhood kids scribbling chalk drawings across the sidewalk. Hope, unfiltered and unscripted. I sipped from my mug, letting that quiet settle around me. Not empty, but whole. It had been a month since the gala. A month since Marissa's mask had shattered in front of sponsors, cameras, and the viral machine that never forgets. No apologies ever came. But they didn't have to. I had stopped waiting for them. I'd been rebuilding since then. Board by board, not just the house, but my sense of worth. The life I had once been told I didn't deserve had started to take shape in my own hands. That Saturday, the neighborhood organized a small cleanup event. I set out a folding table with lemonade and brownies and watched people drift in, smiling, laughing, offering tools, trimming branches, swapping tomato plant secrets. Kids wrote cheerful chalk messages outside my porch. You matter. Stronger than you know. Welcome home. It smiled, genuinely, without glancing over my shoulder. As I wiped down the table in the early afternoon sun, my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but something told me to check. It was a message from Marissa. Hey, things have been rough. Any chance we could crash with you for a bit, just until we figure things out? No apology. No acknowledgement. Just assumption. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The woman who once mocked my house as a junkyard shack now needed a roof? I set the phone down gently beside the lemonade pitcher. I didn't rant. I didn't draft a scathing reply. I just walked inside, light on my feet, lighter than I'd felt in years. In the entryway, above the coat rack, hung a simple wooden frame. Inside was a faded photograph. Me at 8, stiff in a glittered paper crown after a school play, and in the background, slightly blurred but unmistakably present, stood Aunt Imogen, clapping like she believed in every word I'd ever spoken. Below the photo, in neat cursive. You always had the light, eh? I touched the glass gently, the lump in my throat rising, then softening. No tears. Just gratitude. Just peace. I picked up my phone and typed the only response that felt true. There's no space for lies here anymore. I wish you peace. And I sent it. Outside, a child laughed as they drew a wobbly yellow sun on the sidewalk. This house, the one I bought for $900, 0 cents, wasn't my burden anymore. It was my foundation. I had spent so long begging for a seat at a table that was never meant for me, bending, shrinking, performing, just to be loved on someone else's terms. Not anymore. They wanted a key, but I had already built a door, and behind it was a life no one could revoke. Sometimes, the hardest walls we break through are the ones built by the people who were supposed to love us most. But when you stop knocking and build your own entrance, you don't just find freedom, you find yourself. What about you? Have you ever had to choose peace over family? Share your story below. I read every comment. And if you love powerful, true family drama stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Your voice matters here.